say I think it was just a perfect storm that happened. It made the recipe for what was to come next. Everything that happens in life, both good and bad, it is a part of your story and it was meant to happen because that moved me into where I was supposed to be next. I don't think I would have ever left unless they had laid me off.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of 5 Minute Career Hack. I am so excited. As you all know, we try to make sure that we talk about industry trends. And I think one thing we started last season is really delving into the piece of our learning and development that is around exposure. And we know that a lot of times in our career, we make a lot of pivots. We talk a lot about that. And we have met some amazing, what we call pivot masters that have taken their skills, they've made them their own, and they are nothing less than dynamic. So I won't belabor this interview, but it's going to be fantastic. I have this phenomenal woman here, Latoya, who I will give her an opportunity to talk about herself. But what I will preface is that we met her as a 5 Minute Career Hack through Forrest BLK. And I have just been kind of, I would say, adjacent to the amazing things. So a lot of times when we do interviews, we don't get to see the social media or hear the things. We kind of just get a bio and that's it. So this interview is going to be special because I've had a chance to watch and see what you're doing here in the Houston market and beyond with your firm. So it's going to be exciting to hear your journey. So without further ado, Ms. Latoya, welcome to the 5 Minute Career Hack. How are you doing today?
I am amazing. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I always get excited when I have an opportunity to be on the front of the camera versus I'm always behind the scenes helping clients. So, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. So what we like to do, obviously there are questions, there's trends that we like to see, but I will already kind of preface this to say, you may see me writing notes because I never take for granted that I get to learn. So you'll see, like, while I'm asking you questions, I'm putting myself in a learner position as well. And I want to encourage our audience today because there will be gems. There's always something to learn from someone's life journey, right? So I'll kick it off to you. Tell us a little bit. Let's start in your. Let's just delve in. I would love to hear, for you to share, like when you think about it today, right in 2024, some highlights from your career. So let's start there.
Highlights of my career. I think when I think about or think over the span, I've worked for 15 years. A huge chunk of that, slightly longer, but a huge chunk of that has been spent in oil and gas. And so those are key things that I bring into the business now that I'm working full time in the business, a lot of logistics, project management. And so I spent 7 years in oil and gas managing major budgets to the tune of 10 million and under. And with that experience, it helped me greatly in understanding and navigating the entrepreneurial space. There are a lot of gems in corporate that I love that I'm able to bring to clients to help them in telling their story, impact scaling, and all of the things that help businesses to flourish. Moving into this entrepreneurial space, I've been working in the business also for about 13 years. I started the business when I started in oil and gas, and it was very much so just accidental. But during this time, I've had a chance to tell some great stories, help some great entrepreneurs just do great things in the community. And that is actually what we stand for, doing impact work. So last year, we focused on an initiative to help 500 Black men purchase homes. And that was one of the hugest highlights for me personally that I thoroughly enjoyed taking part in because listening to the data, a lot of times we hear these compelling stories about how we are disenfranchised or we are somehow impaired in this aspect. But African American men, there is not a disparity. The biggest thing on why they have not purchased homes is because of some of the myths that they believe around the process. So to be able to dispel those myths, also bring resources to the table and help them to move from idea to execution and then see that process, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Wow, that is amazing. I saw that event, so we'll put a pin there because I definitely want to learn. And there's definitely our audience, whether there's a Black man listening or someone that knows a Black man, I'm sure that they can look at this event and learn, and we can continue, right, the reach of that program. But I want to start, like, did you know that you would always be in marketing? I know you mentioned you were in oil and gas and you started your firm. When did you kind of get this bug or when did you like see yourself here?
So this is the one interesting question people ask because you talk to some people, right? And they're like, "Oh, I knew I wanted to be a doctor since I was a child." No, I had no clue. And so when I was growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So when I started college, I went to college for nursing. And I always say this: anatomy was the make or break for me when I figured out this is not for me. And so I took some time off from college, stepped away after going to school for a year and a half to really figure out what is it that I want to do. It's why now when I hear people talk about, college may not be for you, it may not be for you, and that is okay. Figure out what it is that you want to do because you can waste a lot of money in student loans with something that you look back on and you're like, I hate this, or I just don't want to do this. This is not the career path that I want to go into. I very accidentally discovered what I wanted to do. So moving to Houston, started with a contract firm and I was just looking for work, period. I came here literally, as those stories say, with the clothes on my back,
Really?
packed up my car, and everybody's like, "You're going to Houston?" At that time, I actually had two kids, and so people were like, "Oh my God, she's really leaving." And it was just an opportunity presented itself. My brother happened to be living in a place and was transitioning into another place and still had time on his lease. Asked if I wanted to come in and take over the lease. And so I had a bit of a small support system here. And that was it. That was a catalyst for me. Packed up, came. It was a great opportunity. Signed up with this contract shop and they placed me at Waste Management in the marketing department. And so that's why when I say accidental, it was very much so accidental. Um, get there and meet the people, start working. I stay at Waste Management and work in transportation for 5 years. This was pre oil and gas. And that is when I discovered I actually like this work. I worked in their major accounts department and we were in the community doing impact in addition to the contracts that we were servicing. So a component of it was, the goodwill efforts that we do. We work with the Woodlands, and so they had like their community day, and we would sponsor things for that. We work with the municipalities, and so if there were anything that the cities would do from a community perspective, we most likely had a hand in that as their trash provider. And so we would make concessions, donations, and things like that, and that was about 25% of our job in addition to what we were doing. And that is when I figured out I actually like this work. I still wasn't entrepreneur ready, but I'm like, I like this work. How do I continue to do this thing? And that's how it all started.
It's so fascinating when I hear you say that because we talk, obviously we have the stats and we have the data now, right? Like when you're going through it, and I say we as in me too, right? Like when we think about people, when we start off, we have an idea of what our career looks like, and nobody, I think now that data isn't, there, but 15 years ago, to your point, 20 years ago, information around people changing careers or doing different things, that wasn't, I don't want to use the word acceptable. That I'll speak for myself, an option. It was kind of like you got to choose, you got to lock in, right? So when I hear you say, like, I kind of accidentally fell here, right, in this place, but I love that because I think that that freedom and that taking a chance on yourself is so inspiring. But I can just imagine how scary it is, like coming here, two kids, I don't know this job. I kind like go back to that. Like, how did Latoya feel at that time? Like, what do you feel like when you look back made you take that chance on yourself? Because I mean, the job piece is there, but you're like really advocating for yourself with this move.
So that piece of it becomes, as I look back, this is the theme and the catalyst for everything else. So I always tell people the fact that I could get in my car and get up and go to a new city without any job, any foresight of what is to come next took a lot of tenacity, but it also helped me to remove the anxiety and the fear factor. Now, in full transparency, if you asked me to move at this age, I would say no with nothing. But
You got options. You got options now.
but it did create a sense of courageousness. And so a lot of times I hear people say, like, I'm anxious, or, when they're getting ready to make a leap into something, it did remove that fear factor. So now when I go into things, I can leap into it because I don't feel scared. I'm okay with failing because I don't want to say everything was great. I did, before I got to waste management, work a few other contract jobs, and those were not great, but it led me to the place that I would call home. And so it created a sense of jump into something, fail at it so you can figure out what you want to do, but also make sure that you are taking lessons. And that's what I always look at now. Did we learn something from this opportunity? And how can I become better with this information? And then, like I said, just this sense of courageousness. So now I'm kind of like, we're going to do it. And if we fail, that's okay. And we're going to learn from that. And if we need to pick back up and do it again, because sometimes it's not that you did it wrong, it's that either A, you didn't have the right pieces at the table or individuals at the table, so you needed to go back and reassess what worked, what didn't work, and come back and do it. And so I stayed with that contract firm. Like I said, I was placed at two other locations. I did some call center work before that, hated it. Until I ended up landing at Waste Management. And I'm like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And so definitely a very scary moment, but it taught me a lot in terms of tenacity, but also it taught me what I wanted to do and then what I would and wouldn't accept.
Mm.
So I worked at Waste Management for 5 years, and it was, I came in there very young and bright eyed. And at that time, like you said, because 20 years ago, you committed to things and there was not this option to jump around. And so, for all intents and purposes, my path was very unconventional. But when I got to Waste Management, I felt like, okay, I can be conventional. I want to stay here for 20 years and I want to climb the corporate ladder. I enjoy this. And so I get there, I start working, and they hire me. I get a promotion within that time. And I think to myself, I want to move to the next level while I'm here. What does that look like? What does that trajectory look like? And so I start talking to leadership, and a few things come up. One comes up that A, you don't have a college degree.
Mm.
And the second thing that comes up is B, you don't have enough experience, but I'm still doing the job, which I thought was very interesting. And like I said, at
Doing
that
a job
time,
that you were asking to be promoted to do.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. Just make sure we're tracking. Make sure we're all tracking here. Okay.
Those two were the key reasons why I could not elevate in the current department that I was in. And the department, for all intents and purposes, is small. It's broken up into territories. And those individuals that have been in those positions have been there with the company for 10, 15 years. And so there's not a lot of opportunity, but at the same token, when something does come up, I want to position myself and find out what next steps do I need to take? How do I position myself to get there? And so those are the two things that I'm told from my leadership team. A position happens to come up because the growth of the company, all as Houston, we've got all of these, even like the Woodlands at that time. And I don't know if they've gone through with it. They were considered a community in HOA or development, but they were moving into becoming their own city. So as you have these new developments popping up, the territories are increasing, and there is a need to create another position and add another person. In my mind, I knew I was it.
Yeah, I got this. I got this. You made your own succession plan. Latoya's like that one right there. Got my eye on the prize, right?
God
It's only
created this for
logical.
me. This is it. And I apply, and they give it to someone that has outside sales experience. And a couple things come up in that conversation. So we've got the first two, which is, hey, you don't have a degree, and then B, you don't have enough experience, which they were talking about that sales piece, even though I'm interfacing with all of the municipalities and I have the relationships. And so they give it to her, but they also want me to train her.
Oh, wow.
And in that process, we go through training and helping her understand the logistics behind the scenes. And then also, when you're working so closely with these accounts, there are nuances that are, or just things that you know that are not on paper, that you have just from a hands on historical knowledge that you've cataloged from working with them. So, like I said, we're going through training, and eventually I get laid off, and I am heartbroken.
What was why did you get laid off?
So they said my position had been phased out. They disseminated the work. And so when I came in, I was the support in terms of marketing for all of what they call municipal marketing managers. So when they
Gotcha.
created this other position, they were like, well, now they can take this work back. And it was in 2009 when the economy was crashing also.
Gotcha.
So I won't say, I think it was just a perfect storm that happened. And it made the recipe for what was to come next. And so one of the things that I live by is everything that happens in life, both good and bad, it is a part of your story and it was meant to happen because that moved me into where I was supposed to be next. I don't think I would have ever left unless they had laid me off. And it gave me vision. So before I went into oil and gas, the decision for oil and gas came because I said, I want to be somewhere stable. Oil and gas seems
Which is
pretty stable.
interesting, which is interesting, right? Like that person, especially, and I want to paint this picture for people that are not from Houston, right? But or even cities that have a very strong industry, right? And the fortunate part, right, about being a native Houstonian, being here in Houston, that's kind of the pinnacle, right, of what people want to do from an industry. When you meet people, to what Latoya is describing is even the way the city is zoned, where people live, all of this is built by that. So if you can imagine where you are or whatever country that you're in, this is how it's set up. So I totally agree. Like, so as you're saying this, it's like, oh, anytime you got advice from someone about like what you want to do in your careers, have you thought about oil and gas? And it's like, and what does that mean exactly? Right. So you took me back to that, but I think everybody has been there that's in a big city, right? Or there's an industry, or maybe if there's even just one, right? Like, oh, everybody here does manufacturing. Everybody here is in hospitality. Like you get kind of put in these silos of options. So, what did that mean when it's like, okay, oil and gas was stable? What did that mean for you?
It meant I'm not going to get laid off. I'm going to
Mm,
be here. There's also opportunity for growth. Unlike transportation, oil and gas is diverse. So even if you hit the glass ceiling in one department, you could go somewhere else and within the organization and take that knowledge and go work in another group and continue to grow as a professional. So I'm just knowing like this is it. I have arrived. I need to get to oil and gas. That is my next step. And I spent about two, just about 2 years. I worked in energy for a year and then I did some contract work in between before I make it to my destination in oil and gas.
gotcha. Okay.
And so
But
now
that's the
I feel
goal.
like,
That's the
hmm,
goal of this. But that's
that
the
is the
goal of this.
goal. And so
Okay.
I kept that in the back of my mind. And that's what I always tell people have an idea of where you want to go. When people talk about manifestation, and I know it sounds very cliche, but your mind works in such a way that the things that you think about you put action behind that and you start working towards it. And so if you can't see yourself in it, you will never get there. There's no way. And even without any experience, I want to stress that point because I came from transportation for 5 years. I'm also clocking on the fact that I have not graduated from college and I make it to oil and gas. And in
Was that a
between this,
goal for you to go back to school?
so it was originally not until I got the information when I was at Waste Management that it was a hindrance to me promoting.
Yeah.
And so in that 2 years, I did go back to school to get my degree and thinking to myself, I'm going to go back and get a degree in business. Didn't have any idea of what I could do in oil and gas. I just know that's where I wanted to be. That was it. I know I want to be here.
Got it.
And so eventually I get an opportunity to interview, and that interview was absolutely amazing. If you know anything about some of these seasoned positions, I went through 3 or 4 rounds of interviews. The first interview was with HR. And so knocked it out the park with HR. The second interview was with a group within or a set of leadership within the group that I would be working with. And so that was the second interview. Then I come back for a third interview with more people from that group that are in leadership because these are all of the people that I'll be interfacing with and working with. And they come in. One of the things, and I think one of the topics that's taking place right now is people are talking about transferable skills. That is actually what caught their attention. during my time at Waste Management, and this is actually my thought pattern when I go into anything, you will never outwork me, ever.
Mm,
I am going to come in, I'm going to learn everything about what it is that I'm doing, because even if I'm not in a certain capacity or functional area, I still want to understand how it works and how it funnels into what we're doing. And so, because of that, I was very robust in the billing processes at Waste Management. I understood Excel spreadsheets very well. I got involved in the pricing models. So, I knew Excel vividly in all of the other moving parts from an operational billing outside of just what we were doing in the marketing group. That was the skill set, the Excel piece that caught their attention, that they were like, they brought me in also as a contractor. We've got this contract position, but we know that we're going to get approval for some full-time headcount. We want to bring you in, see what you are capable of doing. But my recommendation would be that you understand the regs, or what they would call federal regulations, and then also the Texas regulations, because that's specifically who we work with from a pipeline perspective, because those things are going to be pivotal in order for us to hire you. And so, even coming in at a lesser position. So, when I came in, again, I came from Waste Management working in the marketing department. In my time in energy, I worked as an analyst because they were able to leverage those Excel skills as well. And so, now coming here, they tell me, "We've got this position, but it's an administrative assistant. How do you feel about that?" And I'm like, "This is where I want to be." So I will come in and do what's necessary. This is where I want to be. And so I take that job. I work in the department for about 6 to 8 months, and I'm kind of coasting. It's admin work, but because of what I've done before, I'm like, "Oh, this is easy." And I'm able to razzle dazzle them because I have an analyst kind of skill set. And so, anything that I do, I come in, I start improving some of their reports that they're doing, making efficiencies in things that they're doing. And that is what catches their attention. And the young lady that hired me, she's the director at the time. She leaves the department, but she was the one who promised me, "Hey, I'm going to bring you in full time." And so she leaves the department, and I get my new director. This gentleman, and it's funny because he just commented on me as an entrepreneur, saying how proud he was of me. And it brought me to tears because it was such a full circle moment. But we gain this great relationship. We start working together, and he sees the same things, and the positions finally do get approved. And he asks me, he comes and he says, "I've got two positions approved. One is an administrative assistant, and one is my analyst. This you have been excelling at, and you can stay here if that's what you want to do, or you can move to analyst." And this is kind of uncharted territory. And so, this is a very unknown new space, but this is going to come with challenges, opportunity, and it's going to stretch you and require a different skill set and different things from you. And he told me, "Go home, think about it." But he allowed me, and this was work ethic and showing up and doing the work, to pick. And that's why I always tell people, don't be afraid to come in somewhere and show them what you're capable of doing, because if all else, you can leave.
you have
You've
options.
gotten
I
the
tell people
skill.
all the time, you have free will. You have free will. And the other thing that's so amazing I hear you saying as well is y- I think a lot of times people are afraid to like create their own position. Like you came in knowing that this wasn't the landing spot for you, right? And learning on the job and doing all these things of even upskilling yourself, where somebody is even expanding that beyond probably at that time you even knowing what you were doing in some of these things of like you're being a project manager, like you said, you're now you have the language to say, I'm improving efficiencies, I'm enhancing, I'm up leveling everybody. At that time, we don't have that, right? Like we don't have those words, but we're just, to your point, doing what I do. I just show up and I make things better, right? I'm shaking the table. And we say things like that in our community, right? But I love how you're giving people language to now think about what may be holding them back and articulating and with their storytelling, because everybody is not as fortunate to have not only one but two supervisors to see more and cultivate that for you. So wow, what a testimony around like even advocacy of someone creating a succession plan, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And even with that, Because you brought up a great point, and I hear the younger generation, and I love right the fact that they have such a phenomenal voice and they advocate
Yes.
for themselves. But what I would say to them is, in those spaces, you're not always going to get along with everybody. But I look for the best in these individuals because every day we didn't wake up and like each other. And so entering into this was like a marriage with them. I didn't wake up every day and go into the office and say, man, I love this man. He's great. I can look back now and say, he taught me so much, and we had a conversation about a year or two ago because I can still walk into that office without a key card, without having to go through security, get into the building that's in downtown and sit at his desk and have a conversation. And he is now the VP of operations because we built a great relationship and we respect one another. And so sometimes it's not about loving them, but having conversations that stem from respect, creating boundaries, but also understanding there is things that I need to learn from this particular situation and what do I learn from it?
Yeah, definitely a lot of emotional intelligence, and it's some things people can tell you and some are life experiences. So to your point of like our younger audience that's listening, to your point, a lot of it is a vibe, right? I'm not catching a vibe. It just feels off, and it's okay. But to your point, one of my like one of the co-founders here and business partners, Candace, she has an episode, well, several, where she talks about like a job is an open marriage,
Hmm.
and she gives, I mean, she just goes through, so check it out, but you're reminding me of that, and it's a very similar story that she has in a lot of things, particularly your experience at Waste Management, um, of we want it to feel good, but to your point in a marriage, you're not happy every day, right? You're not in your loving season every day. It's not we out here on a honeymoon. It's not that phase every and but we expect that, right? And I talk a lot about like parental I feel like a lot of people feel like their job is almost like this parental piece as well. Like we want them to fulfill all these needs, and it's just not going to be that. So, but to your point, you were clear on what you wanted and what it needed to be, and also what he was as well. So, like when that's met, we have a mutual understanding of what this is.
Yes.
And it is what it is, right? So I love that. And I hopefully somebody is blessed by that, that they may think they're in this horrible situation because they're not in love, like to your point, with maybe a personality. But if it's fulfilling what you need, that's what you may need to, clear out and get clear on.
Oh, you said so much. And so I'm gonna actually fast forward you.
Yep, let's do it.
I transferred, so I ended up having 3 directors during that time. One was, the first young lady, the gentleman that hired me, and then who I ended with, when I left the company, and so he was a stickler. Mind you, I'm in a group, so if you know anything about oil and gas, most of the people there have very technical backgrounds and have engineering degrees, so my direct report, who I directly report to is an engineer. And I would tell people, I'm like, if you think entrepreneurship is tough, I said, imagine writing something. And I would be required to draft these documents. And my boss was very old school. He would come in and he would take a red pen and write all over it, scratch throughs, X
Forget
this
your
out,
feelings.
words.
Forget your
And so I'm
feelings.
like, if you think that this, some of this critique is tough. I'm like, imagine what it does to the spirit and confidence when you show up and it's when I say in circles and red, I'm like, oh my God, what am I looking at? And so I would slowly take that. And it went from eventually, a bunch of red marks to 50% less to
Mhm.
75% less. And I remember coming to him when we got down to 75% because my goal was I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to learn him and I am going to conquer this. And going to him one day, we sat down and I said, I don't know if I'm excelling at this. So I need to have a conversation with you to understand why I am not, what it is that I need to change. And so he said, let me help you because perfection doesn't exist. So if you think you're going to get this paper back from me with nothing on it, you're wrong. So if you take that out of the equation and you stop using that as your metrics, let's start there. Secondly, did it ever occur to you that I give you such a hard time because I see what you're capable of?
Mm.
and it provided perspective.
Wow.
My eyes opened. And now I'm no longer striving for perfection, but it just opened my
It's
lens
this
and
dance now it's this dance now that was created, right? Like, you're thinking it's resistance, but it's actually, very, very different.
yes.
Wow. Wow. That's so awesome.
Pressure builds and grows diamonds, and so that pressure that you're under all of that is molding you for what's next, because everything that I did in that position, now that I'm going through the challenges of being in business, I can weather it, because
Mm.
I had these crushing moments in corporate where I felt like, okay, this is not going to work. I can't understand why I'm not excelling in this. And I've come out of this better. And we had that conversation, but also it taught me a life lesson that you don't ever know what the other person is thinking. So now I go into things with a positive mindset, and it's not, why is this happening to me? Because I don't know the other person's experience and why they are making the decision to do what they are doing. But I
Mhm.
go into things and say, this is not personal towards me. And so there is a lesson in this. What do I learn? And how do I come out of this better?
Wow.
So we're going to skip ahead a few more years.
Yeah.
He and I worked together for 5 years. And one of the things after being at Waste Management for 5 years, that was very intentional for me. I worked in total 10 years.
Was that your time frame of, like, you wanted to be in oil and gas for 5 years?
So that was my time frame on promotion.
Got it.
So
Okay.
I was very clear about that with him also.
Okay.
I didn't know what promotion looked like, but I said to him, because we would have our annual meetings where they go over your performance and you can give feedback. And he would say, what is it that you want to do with your career? Where do you see yourself next? And I said, I don't know what's next. What I do know is I'm no longer sitting anywhere for 5 years without promotion. So going back over that time frame that I'm there, in about a year and a half, I was hired. After that, I was then, I think 3 years later, promoted to senior compliance analyst. And so I got the promotion that I wanted, but I'm like, now I'm on the next trajectory because I'm not sitting anywhere stagnant anymore. So we're a couple years, yeah, I'm coming up to 6 years there, and I've had, being hired and the promotion. But if I don't start working at what's next, it's not going to happen. So I'm putting that out into the atmosphere. And he and I start looking across the organization at what am I currently doing in my capacity and what can I do within the organization, because we know I've hit the glass ceiling where I'm at. In
Wow.
order to move to the next level, which would be a compliance specialist or engineer, you have to have an engineering degree. And I don't have that. So there's an element of project management that I'm doing. We start looking on that side of the business where I could get my certification. And I'm not going to go into the semantics of this. Let me just say this: when doors close, that is God saying, that's not what I want you to do. Because I
Mhm.
wanted to go get my PMP, and there were some things that happened. It's considered an optional course in oil and gas. And so you have to get supervisor's approval. And so I won't get into that long story, but it didn't get approved. And I was told, you got to wait.
Mhm.
And so every door that closes is not, it's not a tearful moment, but it is a, this is not either what he wants you to do or this is not now. I have a different conversation with the marketing group within the organization. And in that conversation, I learned that in order for me to move to that group and promote, I'm going to have to make a lateral move. And then it's going to take me 5 additional years to actually get to a point where I could promote.
Oh, wow.
And so it's decision time.
Look, now you gotta look at you because you said this where I wanna be, right? You set these time frames. Wow.
Yes. And 5 years for me is always the pinnacle of everything. Like five,
Okay.
because in 5 years, year one is a learning curve where
Okay.
you're still learning what it is that you're doing. By
Mhm.
year two, you kind of get into your stride and you may start to see challenges in it, and you figure out how to overcome those challenges. By the time you get to 3 and 4,
Mhm.
you're in it and you can fully now look back and say, do I enjoy this work? Do I like what I'm doing? And have I excelled over this time? A lot of times we enter into things, and if it doesn't work in 90 days, I'm out. If it doesn't work in a year, I'm out. it's not enough time for you to really assess the success of something. And so to me, 5 years has always been the time frame to say, I'm going to give it some time. I'm going to assess if it's something that I want to do, and then I will move on from there. And so we go through that exercise, and I've got some thinking to do. Mind you, I started the company at the same time that I started working in oil and gas. And I've been growing it on the side, but because I have this income coming in, I've been able to hire staff, do things under the business because I have this cushion. But now it's like I need to figure out, do I go full time into the business and can it sustain me? Or do I make a move in oil and gas? And if I do this, I'm going to have to let go of the business because it is going to require some training and learning on my behalf because I'm going to have to switch to something else. And I make the decision to bet on myself. We're going for the business. We are doing this. And I sit down with financial professionals. Yes, all this is a great idea, but nothing prepares you for being in business full time like being in the business. And I spent another about, I think, 2 years where my financial advisor has me rewrite my business plan. So the first business plan that you write versus the one when you're now 5 years into the business, you're going to see something different. And then that business plan is not the same as the one that I'm writing now and looking back at data that I'm in the business. So in the beginning, you may take the customers that you can get. Throughout that time, we made some transitions. And so in the beginning of my career in PR, I worked in entertainment. And so people are like, that's so crazy because you're in oil and gas. And you would think that you would find things on this side. I'm like, no, I worked in entertainment, reality stars, things of that nature, actors, entertainment. We pivoted at some point in the business to move towards small business owners. And now our specific focus is lifestyle in organizations that are making impact in the community. And that is our niche. And so figuring that piece out, and my assignment from my financial advisor was, you have to match your corporate income in order for you to make the decision to leave. Not only do you have to match that income, you need to have 6 months of reserve put aside. So you got your work cut out. Go do it. I don't care how you do it. Go do it. And then we will revisit this conversation on leaving. And so this requires me to really stretch myself. I'm burning the candle at both ends of the stick. I'm running the corporate during the day. I'm leaving on lunch to go to meetings. I'm leaving in the evening to go network and go to meetings. I'm facilitating meetings. I'm pushing things out to my staff. And I'm working overtime. But I know this is not sustainable. So this, I'm going to grind 24/7 mindset, ladies. No. there is a point where you will burn out.
Everything has to have a sunset. And I think to your point, especially like you said, I would say for our community, right? Specifically for African Americans, this thought around labor and constantly being on, and just, we've been commoditized, right? Since we've been here. And it's these things like even work ethic, like as you say, that resonates with me because lazy is a bad word in my household. If my parents would, like, the thought, like, lazy just comes off the tongue like it just stank, right? Like and so when I see, you know what I mean? Like, and if you grow up in that era and the things, and then so this is so interesting, right? Because we're at this, I think, crosswords where we have people that just want to go burn sage and namaste all day. And then you got this on 24/7, right? Like, and I could be like, seriously, like, I feel like my timeline is yoga and people out here grind don't stop, right? And whatever season that you're in, to your point, because you shared a lot of seasons throughout your life, is it's a sunset. Like there's a season for everything, but you knew that. I'm curious, I do want to ask a question, specific. It sounds like your financial planner or that was or business, analyst that was helping you with this was challenging you around your own personal finances. And I share that because, like, my business partners, they do a lot of other things outside of our podcast around this. And I think it's kind of like saying the loud part or the quiet part out loud of, people think entrepreneurs that, whatever their thought is about it, and you're sharing your experience with it, but this financial health piece as well, right? of you got to have 6 months or those things. Was that new information? Was that a different way to think about this, the personal and kind of these aspirations coming together? Or was that something already in the back of your mind that you had been working towards?
So this was something new.
Okay.
When you are in corporate, there is a different mindset. So you have 401k. And so I'm putting extra money in my 401k for retirement because I never plotted out what the end game was for me.
Gotcha.
In my mind, I'm still in my employee hat. And retirement for me looks like I am going to work at this company. I'm going to put my 401k aside. I've got money coming in from the business so I can max out my 401k and put money there. And I've got spending cash in my personal account because I've got this kind of dual income. And so, for all intents and purposes, even though we were making good money. I won't say great. We were making good money in the company, paying staff and everything else. It was not sustainable for me to leave corporate at that time and still be able to pay the people that I had on, and I won't say payroll because they're contractors, pay the people that I had employed through the company. So that mindset of having money put aside, actually, it's a complete shift. So that's not even the real shift, but having 6 months of reserve put aside, understanding what it takes and how much money it takes, because thus far I've been taking care of myself and my kids and paying our overhead. Now you have to forecast out paying other people, unforeseen things like COVID that impact environmental factors that impact the business that you never thought about. That's where that 6 months in reserve comes in. And so it is a complete shift in mindset from an employee to now being the employer.
Yeah, it's different responsibilities. And I love what you just articulated so simply, right? Because you're living it. But I do want to make sure the audience doesn't miss that Latoya just really, in that short frame, really defined what it means to be a boss. And people talk about bossing up. It's a responsibility. It's leadership. It's accountability, right? And then you went through what you're accountable for these people, and all these different things that you have to do. So I wanted to ask that because you were breezing through it and I heard like it's just a part of how you were moving in your thought process. And a lot of people don't think like that, right? And that's why we have businesses, to your point, most small businesses don't get to 5 years, right? Or people, to your point, through COVID, we saw, unfortunately, so many family owned businesses for years that just didn't make it because of the lack of knowledge around this financial piece. So I appreciate you being transparent and sharing that. So let's fast forward. Let's talk about this amazing firm, this boutique firm that you have. I, I appreciate you sharing a journey because we do understand how you got to this niche and getting very clear on your purpose today. So tell us what you do, any current projects, how we can support. Let us know. Obviously, we know what you do, and we have gotten to see just this light that comes from you as well. And it's just amazing mindset that you have. It's so inspirational. So I know the audience is already gotten not only some things and lessons, but are inspired by your work, just as you're telling your story. So let us know a little bit more specifically about your firm.
Yes. So officially now we have been in business so we're coming up on 5 years, and that is my magic number. That I've been full time in the business, working the business and growing the team and figuring out exactly what we want our clients to look like. Because understand when you enter into something, a contract or whatever, this is not just a commitment for them, but it is a commitment for you. And I had to learn that piece of it. So understanding who is our ideal client, what do they look like? And not only what do they look like, what are those industries, and how can we be of best service to them? So this is where people ask, and you brought up a great point on, we're a boutique PR firm. There are different sectors of PR. You have your red carpet PR, you have people that do just celebrities, some that are entertainment niched. And so we had to understand who is our client, and we have 4 specific industries that we tend to service. Because we do impact work, nonprofit. We also are in the real estate sector, and a lot of the work that we do in the real estate sector are brands that have a philanthropic arm to what they're doing so that they are in the community making impact. Health and wellness, because like I said, I do understand that there is a key component to how health and wellness plays a role in your overall physical health and your ability to go out here and work. And then last but not least is finance. So those are the four industries that we service now, to where we've niched it down, and why I said these are more about lifestyle and then also impact work that they do in the community. And so we focus on those things. A lot of the projects that we have are centered around that concept of how do we make impact. So like I said, we know health and wellness plays into how we're able to make impact. We know that finances plays a key role into that, as well as your living conditions. So COVID unveiled a lot of the disparities that have been happening in our community. So a huge chunk of my portfolio is around African American entrepreneurs that are making impact in the community. How do we amplify those messages and how do we help them with those initiatives? We do have a diverse portfolio, so it's not just African Americans, but the majority of it is, where we're helping them to tell those stories and giving back. Um, COVID also taught me that, and just like you mentioned when we were exchanging communication a few minutes ago, a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand what it means to move from whether it's employee to employer, or also understanding that maybe being a full time entrepreneur is not for you, and that is okay. As I am now going through this process, I now have an exit strategy for the business, and I don't plan on working in the business full time. So they have gotten the 5 years. I've saw. I also have a responsibility to the people that are in the organization and then also the people that I service. But the next 5 years for me is now backing out of the business. And I don't have a problem going back into corporate America. I have had headhunters approach me, and it brought me great joy to my spirit because I said, and this is how I know it's God's timing. Had I have gotten approached, specifically Dallas News approached me about a senior VP position in their marketing group. And I'm like, do you know if I would have gotten approached about this when I was in oil and gas? Y'all might not see me right now. This is, for all intents and purposes, the dream job that I dreamed of. And I created the dream job through the position. But now I understand what the exit strategy for me looks like, where I want to move into a leadership role and be able to have impact by using my words, my voice to help others, other entrepreneurs, specifically women. And then also, I can see myself in corporate, if that's what God calls me to do, because maybe He showed me that to say and make me feel like you are enough. You've done it. And so these companies are now approaching you because you have arrived at what you thought you couldn't do. But I have much clearer vision on what the next 5 years looks like, and it's backing out of the company. So let's talk about initiatives. I currently push out an initiative specifically for women. We do a series called Power of Vision, where we help women to understand and see what that vision looks like, whether that's on the corporate side or whether that's in entrepreneurship. We want to help you cultivate that. We bring in different speakers, resources, and then also educational information in a fun environment, because we know us women like to have fun, so that you can absorb that information, but also get the resources and connections. That is the one thing that I think people don't understand. Having someone around you that can give you great information, if it wasn't for the team of mentors and all of the other people around me, even friends, having those conversations with people that are knowledgeable, I would not be here today. And so your circle, as they say, can either help you to grow or it can be a cage. It's such a true statement, because those people hold me accountable to the things that I say and do on the days that I want to quit, because every day is not graceful. And they bring me back to reality so that I can think and think level-headedly and say, this is what needs to happen next. And so Power of Vision, March the 9th, we have an up and coming event that we are pushing out. We're also going to be pushing out, which we did last year, a women's entrepreneurship program where we have 5 key pillars, which is vision, marketing and PR, helping you from a digital perspective on how to present yourself online, finances, and business processes. Those to me have been the five things that have helped me tremendously in business, and we continue to enhance those. You don't have to perfect it, but you do have to have a good basis because the financial piece is what got me through COVID. A lot of businesses weren't able to stay afloat because they didn't have their financial wheelhouse in order and they couldn't go get the funding that they needed during that tough time to help them to stay afloat. And so that is my goal, to help in that regard on getting those different elements together. Now let's talk through clients because we got a lot of great things there too. Um, we are then again doing the Black Men Buy Houses event. So our goal and initiative with that is to help 500 Black men. That is going to take place on May the 11th. Same location, which is the Houston Collective. We will be pushing that initiative out. And so we're in the planning process of getting everything together, and that should be rolling out within the next week or so. Calendar wise, I work with breast cancer organizations, and so I'm an advocate for breast cancer as well, sit on several boards, and not only have nonprofits that we work with, but like I said, I also advocate from a board perspective on issues that impact us specifically as women. I understand it, I get it. I am a woman, and so I can see the challenges and how it impacts us. And I have a special place in my heart for helping women out and helping them to address some of the challenges that they see. And so that is up and coming for this year. I typically try to put out a calendar, and so I need to do that currently. So I appreciate this kind of reminding me, and I pin it to my page so that anybody that comes can see, because we have dates out through the end of the year. So October the 19th and 26th, we're doing a breast cancer gala on the 26th, and we have some other dates. And so I try to make sure that I pin that so you guys can see throughout the year how you can support. And then also let me know how I can support everyone else. I am an advocate of giving back. So I'm in the community frequently.
I love that. I love that. Because to your point, a couple of things that have stood out that I think as you're sharing this that I actually wrote down where you're like you being very clear about what you want and what you don't want, right? So us hearing kind of this 5 year kind of plan that you have, but then also being very clear on the initiatives. And to your point of how you can support it, it'll fall in line with it's just the law of attraction, right? Which is kind of this full circle story that you have shared with us. So Latoya, I've really enjoyed our time. I'm so excited that we got to speak. Just for the audience, I think sometimes people feel like these are our friends and we know them because it's just organic conversation. I think to your point around being very intentional around your circle, so the forest be okay, being able to meet, just you have these conversations and you put things out there, you end up getting joined with people that are aligned, right? And I think
Absolutely.
the biggest piece is just being on purpose, right? And I think we share that. So I have enjoyed I've heard and learned with everybody else. But I agree, if there's any way that we can connect or I can support you as well, I'm confident that that will come up.
Absolutely.
Um, so you're just such a beautiful person. I'm so excited for you and what's to come. And to your point of like what these doors will be. So congratulations on whatever that is that's going to be next for you. So this one we'll wrap up with. We always ask our guests to leave the audience with 5 words.
Mm.
So yeah, I know it's off the dome. That's why I didn't give it to you from the beginning because it's usually in the moment. So we will end
Do
with
they have
that.
to be five individual words or just 5 words?
That's all the rules. 5 words, however it comes to you.
Let me think, because I got one that I do that I like.
Yeah.
So if I had to say this, trust the process. It'll work itself out. It'll work.
Trust the process. It will work. Yes. Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes. Wow. So amazing. So amazing. So thank you so much. Where can the audience find you?
So if you are looking to connect with me personally, I always kept it simple. This was a rule from corporate. So it is Latoya Hurley on Facebook, Instagram, and then also LinkedIn. Make sure that you connect with me. If you're looking to follow the business, Innovative Marketing Group. And so innovative underscore marketing on Instagram, and then Innovative Marketing Group across all other platforms on Facebook and also LinkedIn.
Yes, and the ask I would have for the audience is you know, write down some things that you took away from this. Put this in the comments. Share this with your network. If you got something out of it, send this episode to someone today, and then also reach out and find a way to support Latoya Hurley in her business, or you know, sometimes it's just being a fan and being able to send those positive vibes. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
It's been another
you.
episode. Yes, the 5 minute career hack. And I know I've gotten a lot out of it. So thank you so much.